Thales, his claim to fame, he gets the grand title of Father of Philosophy, or I think it would be fairer to qualify it the Father of Western Philosophy. And what was amazing about Thales was he was able to accurately predict an eclipse of the sun. And now people had predicted eclipses of the sun before, but it had always been done through supernatural means. Like, for example, at the Oracle of Delphi, people would go in and sacrifice a chicken or an animal. The priest or the oracle would read the entrails, and they could give you all sorts of prophecies, which sometimes did not come true. Thales was able to predict an eclipse of the sun, not because some god whispered in his ear or some daemon gave him inspiration, but he was a keen observer of the physical material world. And this is the first category I want to give to you in this class. The first series of philosophers we're going to discuss all come under the category of monistic materialist. A monist, think of monocle, it's someone that believes in one thing. A materialist, philosophically speaking, is someone who only believes in the physical material world. So, for example, you have a body, but not a soul or spirit. You have a brain, not a mind. Does this make sense to you? So, anything not physical material for the ancient Greeks did not exist. Now, even if they do talk about a soul or spirits or gods or goddesses, think about that in the Greco-Roman world. Even the gods and goddesses of the Greeks are physical material beings. They're not just spirit, they have physicality to them, and they can even suffer and die. So this is a very different types of gods than the Judeo-Christian concept of God. So get that in your mind first. So these are materialists. They believe only the physical material world exists, but the early Greeks are looking for one underlying substance. And in a really great commentary, if this is like super thin, like it's a great for an intro book, but it's really thin. If you want to get a little beefier, you can look at Copleston's series of, he does a commentary on the history of philosophy, Copleston. And he uses a German word called Urstoff. And Urstoff means the underlying substance from which all things come. It's way easier saying Urstoff than the underlying substance from which all things come every time. So that's what it means when you hear me roll out that German word, Urstoff. So they're trying to look at what is it that precedes everything else. And Thales, in addition to predicting this eclipse, and he did that by simply observing the paths of the sun and the moon, and he was able to predict when they were overlap. I mean, brilliant, right? And we can actually use modern day astronomy to look back, and we actually have an exact date for the beginning of philosophy. And I think it's something like 585 BC, May 25th or something. I'd have to double check, but we can actually look on the day of that eclipse that he predicted. And it wowed all his contemporaries. But in addition to that, he was trying to figure out what could it be. And the first cartoon in the book, or the second one, he has a picture of this like cow, right? And here's this cow eating grass, but he's trying to figure out, how do we get from grass to milk? What is going on in this animal that is eating one material object, and yet it is producing poop and urine and milk? How is all that coming from grass? There must be some underlying thing that is manifesting in different ways. And Thales came up with this idea that the one underlying substance of all things is water. And so water is such a great guess for an ancient Greek, because the Greeks would have seen water in liquid form, in gas form, and solid form. And so here you have one substance or element that can be both solid, liquid, and gas. And so brilliant, right? Now, today, I don't know any physicist or chemist that think water is the underlying substance of all things. But I think it's similar to like how Sigmund Freud is revered. There's very few Freudians, practicing Freudians today, but he asks questions to start a different trajectory of thinking and exploration of the human soul and psyche. And I think that's similar to Thales. Very few people would say his conclusions were how things actually are, but he got the Western mind thinking along these patterns. And so I think he's of great value in that sense. So water, here you have this substance, and out of water he sees everything you can imagine in the world. And take humans for example. I think we're made up of something close to like 70% water. Our physicality is, we're like water beings, water babies. We are like embodied water moving around in the world. And so that's super interesting. And that's really all I want you to know for Thales is his system of using observation. He's not going by what the priests tell him, what the Oracle of Delphi told him, what his mama told him, but he's questioning even his own culture, even this idea of the gods, right? But you have to be careful because polytheism in this culture, even though it wasn't like Egypt or the Hebrews, if you disregarded or disrespected the gods, it could cost you even your life. And that's what happened to Socrates. He offended the sensibilities of the Athenians, and when we get to him, you'll see he's kind of like the first martyr of philosophy because he wouldn't kowtow to the gods of Athens, and he upset a lot of people doing so, as you can imagine. All right. Any questions on Thales before we do our next guy?